Former Boston Police Commissioner, Fox News contributor Ed Davis joins me now. Ed, always terrific to see you. What do you think about the rise in crime, of violence against law enforcement, but also the very clear message out of New York City that crime pays?
There's no question that's the perception on the street right now. I talk to police officers all across the country. Proactive policing has been reduced across the country just because police are getting a mixed message from the community as to what they want. And when you take that and you put in activist DAs that are basically operating under the premise that no one needs to go to jail, you end up with a very violent outcome. And my colleagues and I are very worried about this summer. I think that across the nation, we've already seen very high rates of violent crime in the cities.
But what's going to turn the tide? I've pointed to the Democratic primary for mayor here in New York City. That the voting is tomorrow. There's essentially one candidate is a former police officer, but then also there basically people who would rather stand up for criminals who are running for mayor of New York than stand up for the police. They somehow think that fewer police officers on the street would mean fewer criminals. That from the left-wing land of lunacy. But what will change this? Because again, and they also, the message is that, well, these aren't, they're no victims of looting, because the businesses would be reimbursed by insurance. Please disabuse them of that notion.
That's ridiculous. I speak to victims of looting all the time. We work with companies like this across the country, and these people suffer. They're the ones who employ people in the cities that they operate in, and there have been many businesses that have closed over the years because of the damage that has been caused by looting to their overall ability to operate in the community. So it's a very serious problem, and what's going to change it, Dagan, is the people are going to become very disenchanted with these far-left policies. You're going to see crime go up, and when that happens, as Mayor Menino used to say to me all the time, if the crime rate goes up in the city, I will lose my job. People don't take kindly to being victimized. I've been oriented to victims my whole life after 35 years on the police department, and right now the victims are not being paid attention to, and that's really what we need to do.
And again, this is a phrase that I've used over and over again, but it's the mayor, it is district attorneys, look no further than Cy Vance Jr., it is a governor here, it is left-wing city council members, it is left-wing people in the assembly in Albany, but they coddle criminals and then treat the victims like detritus. But they don't see it that way. And I don't know what it takes other than, because the people that it hurts the most are people in lower income areas. The business owners are hurt. There are fewer jobs. The transit crime, the crime on subways is skyrocketing. Those are the very people in the outer boroughs who need to be able to safely commute to work on a subway, and they can't do that.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct, Dick. And we're going back to the bad old days here with these policies that in the past have been a problem. The police need to step up and reestablish their community relationships with the community. They need to be reassured by the community that the community wants proactive policing but respectful policing. If we can do that, we can push this tide back.
And it would take voting these people out of office. God forbid that somebody who's a Democrat comes in, like an Eric Adams, who is legitimately concerned about the rise in particularly violent crime.
Right, and with his experience in Brooklyn, there's a man that can understand and turn the tide on this bad situation that's starting to develop. He has real experience on the street. So I'm all for the political process, but I will tell you that the people in the neighborhoods don't take kindly to being victimized. That's going to play itself out in political races across the country.
Because people here in New York City, some of the strictest, probably the strictest gun control laws in New York, you aren't allowed, the Second Amendment doesn't exist here. You're not allowed to defend yourself. And that's the situation that so many people face, is they go out in the street and they're worried about getting punched in the face, getting their nose broken, and they know doggone well that the perp isn't going to be prosecuted. I mean, they might be charged, but they'll be put right back out on the street. But some cities, I want to get your reaction to this, some cities are refunding the police after just 1 year that the defund the police movement gained momentum. Tens of millions of dollars going toward construction of new precincts and increasing department budgets to fight back against increasing crime. Your reaction to this, Ed, and will it happen in the far left cities like New York or Chicago or even a Los Angeles?
Well, it's good to see that cities are starting to recognize that, as my colleague Bill Bratton always says, police matter. So the number of officers out there, the time it takes to get to a call when someone needs help, the number of prosecutions of violent criminals and the incarceration of those violent criminals. We've had too many people in jail, I'll grant you that, but when we start to release violent criminals, people who have committed serious crimes against people like we saw in New York this past week, we are sacrificing dozens of more victims that those individuals are going to act out on. It's clear that someone who commits a violent crime will continue to do that. They need to be separated from society. I think the far left cities that don't heed the danger here will pay a price down the road. People in the neighborhoods everywhere are concerned about their personal safety. If you don't have that, you have no economy, you have no freedom of movement. The constitutional rights of the victims are being sacrificed for the constitutional rights of the suspects.
I encourage everybody to go back and read the original bail reform law as it was put into practice here in New York City. Now, they tweaked it last year, but in the original list, bail-free crimes, no bail necessary, right back out on the street, were manslaughter, arson, and crimes against children. So that literally was okay with the leadership, Governor Cuomo on down. Like, they didn't consider those crimes that warranted actually making people post bail. That's how insane this country has become in certain pockets. And let's hope the tide is definitely turning. Ed Davis, terrific to see you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Dave.
Be well.